So let's dive into it. This is race number 13, the main event down at Gulfstream. The Fountain of Youth, a mile on the 16th on the main track for 3-year-olds. Field of 11 signed on. Post-time favorite was Hidden Scroll. He was visually awesome in his career debut, going 7/8 of a mile, or a one-turn mile, that's what it was, on a sloppy sealed track. Went out there, blitzed the field, 104 buyer. You know the deal. He was bet down to 6-5. Second choice in the race was Vekoma, coming off of a little bit of a layoff. Hadn't seen him since the end of the year up at Aqueduct. He had a number of other alternatives, though, should you have chosen to go against either of them. Ultimately, neither of them got the job done. Shug gets it done with Code of Honor. Here's the stretch run.
And Challenging the favorite as they turn for home. Less than a quarter of a mile to go in the Fountain of Youth. Hidden Scroll digs deep, but Code of Honor blows past, and Code of Honor is on to the front. Hidden Scroll trying to hold on to second. Here's Bourbon War unleashing a big run down the center, but Code of Honor is going to hang on to win the Fountain of Youth. 3 parts of
Code of Honor prevails in this year's Fountain of Youth at odds of 9-1. Bourbon War, a fast-closing runner-up here at odds of 4-1. Vekoma, the second choice, finishes third in here at 3-1, and Hidden Scroll beaten as the 6-5 favorite in his first start, going 2 turns. First start on a fast track, first start against winners. Let's talk about Code of Honor, the winner. He's 204 lifetime, 3 times in the exacted, just under $385,000 in career earnings. Owned and bred by W.S. Farish in Kentucky, trained by Shug McGahee, ridden to victory by John Velasquez. You can see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. He's by Noble Mission out of a Dixie Union mare named Reunited. 95 buyer speed figure for Code of Honor, 118 time form US rating. That is pace adjusted, excuse me. That is the number that incorporates how fast things were, to no one's surprise. With these fractions of 22 and 4, 45 and 3, 10 and 2 for 3 quarters, they stopped the clock at 43 and 4. So no one's surprised. The opening quarter, half and 3/4 splits, all color-coded red for time form US. This was a ridiculous pace, signed on early, especially when you consider that Hidden Scroll was the one cutting out the fractions. Let's talk about the winner first, though. Code of Honor sat a really cushy trip in the grand scheme, sat mid-pack, down on the inside, saved ground, got a beautiful ride from John Velasquez, rounding the far turn, weaving through, going through the 2-path and back down to the inside. And he came on and he finished. He came home in 32.75. This was a nice rebound effort. I was very, very down on this horse coming into it because I thought his Mucho Macho Man was terrible, and it was. This race doesn't excuse the Mucho Macho Man. He was no good that day. This race, though, this is promising enough. You would like to think that he can continue to move forward off of an effort like this. It sounds like Shug McGahee would like to keep him in South Florida to run him in the Florida Derby if he needs another week. You could run him in the Wood. You could run him in the Bluegrass. There's a number of options, and that's kind of the situation for a lot of these horses. For what it's at least been reported, you can find all the latest over on DRF.com from all of our great reporters and handicappers and analysts. They're going to have all the latest as far as where these horses may or may not go next, but Shug has made it clear South Florida would ideally be his next start, running in the Florida Derby. If not, they give him another week. They run him up in New York. They run him in Kentucky. They got options. Bourbon War, I thought this was a good effort from him as well. Still a little bit on the green side. 93 buyer, 115 time form US rating. Big difference there between those two simply because Bourbon War came from farther off. And I guess that's the thing for me that, after the race, there were so many people that talked about Bourbon War being, oh, he's the horse. You're going to get an extra 16th of a mile for the Florida Derby. You're going to get so many different things. He galloped out well, X, Y, and Z. I don't disagree with any of that. But at the same time, a lot of people were saying, oh, he just ran out of ground. Well, I mean, isn't that kind of the name of the game? You got to get there first. And you're right, he did run out of ground. But I kind of feel like Code of Honor ran a better race. He was closer to the hot pace that was signed on. He got the jump, and he prevailed. Sure, it was a diminishing margin, but he finished ahead of him. I mean, I'm not going to take away from Code of Honor, but all of a sudden prop Bourbon War up on a platter. I think Bourbon War is a prime-time contender for races going forward. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say otherwise. I thought he ran great. I picked him second in here. I was toying with picking him on top. Ultimately chose to go otherwise, but I thought it was a good effort. I just don't know that I think it was so far superior or his prospects going forward are that much better than everyone else's in this race. I think he's very, very live. I think he's very, very talented, and he's in good hands with Mark Henning. I don't know that he necessarily ran that much better than so many other people seem to make it out to be. Vekoma is another one that ran quite well when you think about it, coming off of such a long layoff. He is not the prettiest mover. That's just, it is what it is. There's really no other way to put that. But considering this is his first start since November, I think this is a promising enough move here. As far as Bourbon War and Vacoma are concerned, they could easily run in the Florida Derby. They could wait and run them up at Aqueduct in the Wood. All these horses have plenty of different options still ahead of them. Vacoma, there is still that part of me, and I know he flattened out down the lane, but he was a lot closer to the pace than I actually thought he would be. I thought he'd be farther back. He ran well. There's a part of me that still wonders if he's going to be better going one turn, but it's far too early to be making sort of declarations like that. And now we have to talk about the big horse in here, Hidden Scroll. Now, I tweeted after the race, and it's still, I watched the race a few more times afterward. I still am not totally sure, and I don't know that we'll ever for sure get a definitive answer one way or the other. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. If the instruction was for Joel Rosario to just go and make the lead, then he did what he was supposed to do. Now, was it at the sort of to the detriment of their possible placing? Yeah, probably. Given the fact that you knew that there was a 130 to 1 shot in here, a stretch out turf sprinter that was probably going to go and be forwardly placed. If that wasn't the instruction and Rosario just thought, you know what, I'm on the best horse, I'm going to go on with it. Well, that works to a degree. But then when you look at it and you say, in your second lifetime start, you had all these things going against you, or all these first sort of hurdles that you needed to get over, and you're going to go 45 in a piece and be head and head with a turf sprint stretch out horse that's got no chance. And the fact that he still stuck around as well as he did, I mean, he was not embarrassed in this race from a final margin. I think he was only, just about 3 lengths behind the winner. This was a massive effort from Hidden Scroll. He earned an 89 Beyer and a 120 Timeform US rating. So he actually earned the fastest Timeform US rating in the entire field despite finishing 4th. And I had an individual ask me on Twitter, how does that work? How do you finish 4th, but you have the fastest time? And it comes down to the pace. He was the one setting those fractions, and he still finished relatively well. If you look at it, sure, he was slowing down toward the end, but deservedly so, considering that pace that he set. This was a giant effort. Now, you do wonder, coming out of it, how much does an effort like this take out of a horse like this? We won't know until he comes back and gets back into training, but I thought this was a giant effort from this horse. This is the one that if I'm looking at it and saying, well, I don't know about, sloppy sealed track, first time out against, maidens, 1-turn mile. If I'm unsure about that, and I say you got to prove to me that you actually belong with all these different variables, and again, at 6 to 5, I just don't think he was a smart bet regardless. And I'm not just saying that because he didn't win. I said that before. I just felt like you should have taken a shot against him given the circumstances. I'm a full-blown believer now. I think this horse is the goods. The question is, how quickly can he rebound from a race like this, and can he be ready for whether it is the Florida Derby or the Wood Memorial or the Bluegrass or the Arkansas Derby or wherever it is? Is he going to be ready to go for his next start, wherever that may be? Did this race take a little bit of the starch out of him? I don't know, but I think he's very, very talented. Global Campaign, the horse that I ultimately landed on and picked in this race, I don't think he ran terribly either. He was relatively close to that pace. He was in closest attendance to those top 2 horses. When Luis Saez asked him to get into the run, rounding the far turn, he just couldn't keep up with Hidden Scroll. Then he got in between tight with those 2 horses coming up on both sides of him. Pinched a little bit. I believe I had read that he had grabbed a pretty bad quarter crack. Or a pretty bad quarter, excuse me. And it's just, it's one of those things. I don't think he ran poorly. Maybe he's not ready for this level. Maybe he's not quite to this caliber. Watching him run, I wonder maybe a little bit shorter. Maybe he's another horse that's ultimately going to be a little bit of a 1-turn type. But again, it's too early to tell. He's run 3 times. And wherever he comes back, I'm sure the connections will have him ready to go. And he'll give the best account of himself. Whether it's good enough to run with the big boys or not, we'll still find out. I don't think it was a terrible effort from him, though. Again, 85 Beyer, 115 Timeform US rating. Union's Destiny just came along, a little bit of a plodding move from the back of the pack. I kind of figured with the pedigree he would appreciate going longer. Signal Man, not a great return, but it does feel like this was a means to an end. Just shake the rust off, have him ready to go, whether it is in Kentucky, whether it is somewhere else. I made it clear I don't love this horse, but I could see him picking up some pieces in some races down the road. And as far as the last 4 finishes are concerned, they were all long shots in here. And Gladiator King played a role in the outcome of this race, I believe. If he had left Hidden Scroll alone, or if Hidden Scroll had just been content taking off and just saying, okay, well, the 1,000,001 shot's going to back up. I'll take over from there. I think this race could have ended up differently, but it did not. That's how it played out, and ultimately, Code of Honor is the one that goes and gets top prize in here. But I do think, going into this weekend, I thought this was the most important prep to date, without question. I thought it was going to hopefully clear up some things because none of these 3-year-olds had really wowed me. This race, at least, I don't know that I had any wow performances. The only one close to a wow performance in here for me would be Hidden Scroll. I think Code of Honor ran very well. He at least made me look at it and say, okay, you know what? Maybe he did just need that Mucho Macho Man. Still don't know how far he's going to go when it's all said and done. Bourbon War ran very, very well, very promising. I think he can move forward from this. Vekoma, very well off the layoff, can certainly move forward. Global Campaign as well. There is just that part of me that now I look at it and say, okay, this was good. I wanted to see some solid performances. We saw some solid performances. Now this is a little bit clearer, and this upcoming weekend, now the attention shifts there. Of those 3 or 4 races that are going to be important as far as Derby contenders and Derby preps are concerned, how many of them are going to sort of do as well or fare as well? How many of those races will fare as well as the Fountain of Youth did? Because at face value, I think this was a solid race, and I think you're going to have, these could very well be some of the 3-year-olds that we're seeing and we're talking about the first Saturday in May. Which one do you like? That's your call as the handicapper, and I'm curious. Write it beneath the video player on YouTube or tweet at me on Twitter. Let me know. Who do you like coming out of this race? If I had to pick one right now, I'd be torn, but I'd probably go ahead and scroll over Bourbon War. I know that may not be a popular pick. And that's totally overlooking the winner. Code of Honor. He rebounds and gets the job done for Shug and Johnny V. 95 Beyer speed figure and 118 time form US rating, winning this year's Fountain of Youth.